secrecy of the vote, and E, organize and conduct its election campaign in a manner that contributes towards a congenial and peaceful atmosphere during the campaign. Number 3, that section 1163 reads, any political party, any candidate for election to parliament, and any person representing or acting under the direction of any political party or any candidate must not prevent the distribution of handbills and leaflets and the display of posters of other parties and candidates, or B, deface or destroy the posters of other parties and candidates. In this relation, there were 3 people in the north that have been successfully convicted and sentenced by the court for defacing materials in the 2014 general election. The details of that judgment is on our website. We will be able to give you the names of those from the website as well. One of them is a very prominent writer to the letters to the editor. C, use any language or publish or distribute pamphlets, newsletters or posters, or make any broadcast containing language or material that amounts to racial or religious vilification or that threatens or incites violence. As you are very well aware, there is one person currently facing the court for this particular offense and has been charged. D, prevent any other party from holding rallies, meetings, marches or demonstrations. E, imitate the symbols of another political party or candidate, or steal, disfigure or destroy political or campaign materials of another political party or candidate. F, encourage, engage in or permit any kind of violent activity to demonstrate party strength or to prove supremacy. G is to cause any damage to any public or private property during any campaign. H, coerce or offer monetary or other kinds of direct inducements to persons to vote for or against a particular party or candidate or to abstain from voting. I, coerce or offer monetary or other kinds of direct inducements to persons to stand or not to stand as candidates, or to withdraw or not to withdraw as their candidacies. J, procure the support or assistance of any election official or public servant to promote or hinder the election of a candidate. K, to seek to prevent any persons from attending the political rallies of another party. Or L, encourage, incite or permit its supporters to do anything prohibited by this section. We have repeatedly highlighted in the media various activities by actors for various political parties in which we have noticed that they have breached either of these sections, and you will have noticed that the political parties have very quickly come out to say that this person does not represent the party. But ladies and gentlemen, now that it is election time, it is quite clear as to who is an actor for the party or a representative of the party, and such quick denial of facts will probably take longer this time. Any political party or any candidate for election to parliament and any person representing or acting under the direction of any political party or any candidate must not A, procure votes by forcible occupation of polling stations or through illegal activities in the polling station, and B, interfere unjustifiably or in bad faith with duties of election officials, disturb the process of casting or counting of votes, falsely assert to voters that their votes will not be secret, or use any language or publish any document that seeks to threaten or incite hatred or violence in any form against any other person or group of persons which may amount to racial or religious vilification. And 5, any person who contravenes subsections 3 or 4 commits an offence and shall be liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding $50,000 or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 10 years or to both. Ladies and gentlemen, in August this year, the Electoral Commission had made it absolutely clear to political parties, candidates and their representatives to keep election campaigns clean and clear from religious and racial intolerance. Ladies and gentlemen, despite this constant reminder, we have noticed there is a lot of discourse in this area in relation to the same activity. Whilst if it is placed in various ways, it still amounts to the same. This morning's newspaper was rather worrying to us when the Fiji Times has claimed that the religious and racial discussions as you will see in the first paragraph, and the Fiji Times asserts that it is wrong. We'd rather hope that the media plays a rather more responsible role in applying these principles to ensure that the 2018 general election is free from such behavior, rather than to play to the political tunes of what you get as responses. The Fijian Elections Office would like to remind everyone that there is no room for such behavior in our electoral environment. We are close to the election, 14th of November, and it is time for everybody to act responsibly. In August, we asked FICAC to immediately investigate all complaints in relation to elections when it comes to unethical campaigning, and you will see from the representative from FICAC here that they are ready to deal with complaints as we make them. Ladies and gentlemen, as again I would like to say to all voters who attend rallies to ensure that if you feel that there is discussions in these rallies that are in contradiction to what the law requires, feel free to record them and furnish us with the recording. This will greatly help us authorities in ensuring that the general election does not have these prohibited actions that are used to garner votes or to create a level of disinterest in the election. It is very, very important that the value is given to the vote, and we do not have actions that prohibit people from stepping up to mark their ballot paper. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hand over to Mr. Raj from the Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission, as well as the chairperson of MIDA, to issue a statement on this matter as well.
Thank you, SOE. I implore on all political parties, actors, stakeholders to take heed of Section 116 of the Electoral Act around the campaign rules. It's extremely important because if we are going to ensure that Fiji enjoys credible, free and fair elections, it also means that everyone has the right to a campaign that is free from racial and religious vilification. There's no denying, and a lot of political commentators have said, well, ethnicity and race is a fact of life. These are markers of difference. These are signifiers. But the point is that given the history that Fiji has emerged out of, it is imperative that we are able to disambiguate race from racism and learn to evacuate race from the vicissitudes of racism. Precisely because we are in a very, very fraught political environment where political fault lines run deep. Elections, as you know, is a highly sensitive time. Things can get really contentious, and it is imperative that our political leaders, political parties, individuals exercise responsibility to an extent that our speech does not have the effect consciously of encouraging racial or religious vilification or indeed discrimination on any prohibited grounds of discrimination. And that is a fundamental thing, so that it does not impede people, in terms of exercising their ability to cast their vote without fear of reprisal and recrimination. So that's very, very important. I also actively encourage, citizens to please keep an eye out, and if you see political parties or individuals willfully, encouraging racial or religious vilification, which has the potential to descend into actual violence, to please report it to the Fijian Elections Office, the Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission, or the Independent Commission Against Corruption. It is important that we hold these individuals or parties and political actors to account, because this would, as I said, seriously impede the ability of our voters to cast their vote without due pressure, without the fear of reprisal and recrimination, precisely because they come from a particular ethnic group or religious background and so on and so forth. So we will be auditing these campaigns. I would also like to implore that political parties need to absolutely make their campaigns transparent. They should allow the media access so that it is not shrouded in secrecy. The media has the right to ask difficult questions. You are, of course, aspiring to be the next government, so you need to get used to the fact that you'll be subjected to scrutiny. So when the media does ask difficult questions of you, don't take it as an affront. This is about full accountability, transparency, and like I said in an earlier interview, if indeed your campaign is clean, you're dealing with and you're addressing issues that are germane to the welfare of the people, then you've got nothing to hide. So subject yourself to full scrutiny. And you know, we are also calling on members of the public to be absolutely vigilant. Political parties need to take heed of the fact that, you know, we are in an environment where people are, you know, really standing up to racial and religious vilification. They've seen what happened, you know, what's happened in the past in this country, and you know, people are going to basically hold individuals and political parties to account. So know that the citizens of this country are not passive. The reason why we decided to do this press conference was to say that, you know, in the event that people do find that, you know, political parties are consciously vilifying, you know, individuals or, you know, their political adversaries, you know, because of their race, religion, ethnicity, so on and so forth, and other prohibited grounds of discrimination prescribed under Section 26 of the Constitution, that they have a recourse. They can access various institutions to lodge a complaint, and there are various remedies available under the law for us to address that. Thank you.
Mr. Israeli will also be making a statement on behalf of FICAC.
Thank you so much. I believe we've seen the consequence of bridges to the law that has been set down by the Electoral Act, and FICAC as well, in support of the Supervisor of Elections, comments, and Human Rights Director, wish to take this time to confirm that we are mandated under the Electoral Act, Section 18, as the investigation arm, prosecution arm of the Elections Office, which is the reason why we wish to make this known to the public, and as well as the candidates and the political parties, that any breaches to the campaign rules or any breaches to the electoral offences under Part 6 of Section 135 to 151, any breaches to those legal provisions under the Electoral Act, we will come down hard on them, for the fact that we have experienced in the past investigating cases of such nature, electoral related offences, and we will continue to pursue those who are in breach of this act, the Electoral Act offences. Secondly, the processes that we have in place is open to the lodgement of complaints from either, or receive complaints from either the Fiji Elections Office, the Supervisor of Elections, or the public as well. This goes out to the public if you feel and see or have witnessed any breach of this, the campaign rules, of any of these, the offences being committed out there during the campaign period, please do not hesitate to get in touch with FICAC. We have a toll-free number which you can contact, and that is 1322, as well as our landline 3310290. Toll-free, a line of 1322, and the landline 3310290. Thirdly, I believe it's important that we would like to let the public know that we are working very closely with not only the Elections Office and Supervisor of Elections, but the Fiji Police Force as well. We are coordinating really well in having all complaints that are probably lodged from every the voting stations or police post or any police stations for that matter. We have coordinated, and we have made arrangements that such complaints are directed to either directly to FICAC or through the Supervisor of Elections Office. I guess that's all that we need to let the public know, and also the parties, the election or the parties know that we are ready to take on any complaint that are related to the Elections Office. Our powers comes under the Section 18, Section 18A, and as well as the FICAC Act under Section 2A, subsection C, gives us every powers to look into Electoral Act offences that are committed during the period of elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now open the floor for questions. And before we go, I just wanted to repeat the number. The FICAC toll-free number is 1322, and complaints can be lodged on that number, as well as on 3310290. Any voter can also refer the complaint through the Fijian Elections Office. You can complain to us on our website. We've got a complaint form for any voter to complain through the complaints form, as well as you can call our office on the number 1500 and report a matter to us. So we're opening up the avenues for voters to refer matters to us, and of course voters are also welcome to walk into any of our offices and lay the complaint through direct channels. Is there any question?
Yes, Maggie, FBC. So have there been any complaints in the last 24 hours, official complaints lodged with either of your institutions?
The social media, if I may, the social media is actually saturated with serious amount of commentary where people have expressed concerns about how some of the campaigns are descending into racial and religious vilification. People are not talking. We don't really talk about race and ethnicity in isolation. We're of course talking about it in terms of the fact that one community is preponderant over another, in terms of access and equity and all of that. And when you start to consciously then instill fear in people and engender that fear, there's a lot of conversation right now around people's religious orientation. For instance, people are talking about how a politician who's actually a Muslim is now pretty much practically a Hindu, because this individual's now gone to temples and so on and so forth. These things go a long way in giving credence to discrimination. I think when people harp about free and fair and credible elections, they forget that it is also about upholding the principles of non-discrimination, and this is why we're concerned. This is the first reason. The second reason, of course, is the fact that these things we've seen, our history shows, they easily descend into violence. We've seen what happened in 2000. We've seen what happened in 1987. So we don't want to see a repeat of that. We don't want to passively sit and wait for things to descend to that level before we start acting. So this is why we're being proactive. This is why we're saying and we're appealing to members of the public that you have been raising these concerns, through the social media and all of that. It is time that you lodge official complaints to various institutions so that we can provide you with the appropriate recourse. And so this is why we decided to do this. We also want to send a very, very strong message to all politicians and all political parties. Read 116 very, very, very carefully, because we're not leaving anybody in the lurch. The law is very clear. And if you're working within the permissible, narrative of the law, you have every right to, exercise freedom of expression, as long as it is within, the permissible, democratic norm. It's absolutely fine. But if your speech act begins to descend and has the effect of encouraging racial or religious vilification, then I'm afraid you're in breach of 116. And so it's important that, one, we educate and advocate in terms of what 116 is all about, and two, people know that these things are not acceptable, that we will take very, very strong action and not sit and tolerate and be passive around this, precisely because this is a very, very sensitive political climate.
If I can just add to what Mr. Raj said, following the announcement of the election date, the campaign provisions are now applicable, and the intention of the Fijian Elections Office is to always ensure that the interest of the voter is protected at all times. And when behavior contrary to the section happens, the voter is the first person that needs protection. And to this extent, I think we should call upon all political parties to develop their own codes of conduct, particularly in social media or even during campaigns, to ensure that parties have demonstrated their own abilities at their interests actually at preventing such actions. And this is very important. And Nasik Swami's this morning's article on the Fiji Times as a deliberate statement that says that this is a non-issue, which we definitely don't find as relevant. I mean, one has to only go to Firoz Ghulam Muhammad's Facebook page and you see heaps of stuff that he represents from his political party's angle. It's not simple enough to just say, leave it to the authorities to deal with them, but the parties should now take responsibility and actually action things on their own. And this is very important. The political parties need to show and demonstrate that they are taking ownership of these important protections for the voter, and by developing their own codes of conduct, developing their own rules of procedure around discipline, and they need to show that based on the findings and the obviousness of some of these issues, there is some action has been taken. We are yet to see some of that, and in the next coming days, the next 23 days, 28 days, or whatever it is, that's what is going to be the demonstration by parties to show commitment to the free and fair election that we will have. Since January this year, there's been a lot of discussion around calls for free and fair election by various political parties. It's time to walk the talk.
The other thing, Supervisor, if I may, it's also imperative that citizens who will raise invariably concerns around the fact that certain political actors, parties, and so on and so forth, in fact, have been vilifying around racial or religious lines. These people, because they are reporting these transgressions, are not, in fact, subjected to reprisal or recrimination. And this is why we are coming out very, very clearly to say that the Human Rights Commission, the Fijian Elections Office, FACEC, and the police, we are there to protect the citizens as they raise their concerns around these things. Because, as you know, sometimes what happens is when people do raise issues around such transgressions, they might be subjected to violence. There'll be attempt to muzzle and censor and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that our citizens are protected as they uphold the rule of law, because they're not doing anything wrong. They're actually upholding the rule of law. So that's going to be very important.
And I've called for parties to develop their social media codes of conduct at least 2 months ago. And it is now up to the media to call for accountability in this regard. We ask parties to develop these codes. I haven't received any copies. In fact, one party wrote to me and said it's too difficult for us to go on social media and see those accounts that are named after us but are fake. I think it was published by that party in the Fiji Sun on a Saturday party option paper. So these are things that are now crunch time, and it is important for everybody to exercise these responsibilities. See, as I said, since January this year, there's been a lot of talk about free and fair election, and this is now time to show for it. Political parties need to exercise a great amount of responsibility. Let it not happen that the entire election is based on so much talk about racism and racial vilification that it is impossible to recover from. It is crucial for all parties to, not only political parties, but all stakeholders to act on this regard and ensure that the common sense prevails, and that the Section 116, particularly that elaborates on the specifics of what is not to be done, is adhered to, and that is important. And if someone wants to know what is the basic test for my statement, would someone feel offended by what you said, is the most basic human right test to any activity that a party would do. It doesn't mean that you come from a majority background that your statements are suited only to the majority, so the minority's points don't matter. You're not only campaigning to the minority, your statements affect the other presence in the structure as well. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I think the point is that you're just not talking and appealing to one community. When you do address a particular, ethnic community or religious background, you're actually making those statements vis-a-vis other communities. So this is not a statement in isolation. And I think that's the point that we need to recognize, and this is why we're very troubled. So if you're addressing one community, you're obviously talking about other communities. We need to understand and appreciate that it is precisely because it has the potential to encourage discrimination, to encourage vilification, that then translates into violence in ordinary communities, in rural, remote communities. as we saw in 2000, as we saw in 1987, that needs to stop. And that's precisely where we need to have the necessary safeguards. The other thing, of course, is that, ultimately, we want to make sure that our citizens are able to cast their votes without that kind of prejudice,
Yes.
without the weight of fear, without the weight of incrimination and reprisal and so on and so forth. And this is why we're appealing to people's sense of reason. Of course, we want to have a very robust environment in which there's thorough debate. But you can have this debate without necessarily vilifying that somebody's a Muslim or somebody's a Christian or Hindu or black or white and so on and so forth. And I think that's what the challenge is all about. Being able to balance the imperatives of freedom of expression and the various responsibilities that come with it. It's an old conversation, we've been having it for years, but there are profound consequences for our people at this point in our historical political conjuncture. So we are laying this very, very clearly. The other thing is, nobody can come up to us and say that we don't understand what Section 116 is all about. It's very, very clear. Nobody can say that the law is ambiguous. So I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to go out to communities and educate and advocate around what 116 is saying. And I think when our communities are empowered, they know what the law is saying, there'll be great amount of vigilance. That kind of democratic audit is going to be so important. So this is an appeal to people's sense of reason, and the last resort, of course, will be the law, the full
Yes.
brunt of the law.
Mr. Raj, you raised
Yes.
a good point, saying that political parties need to be open and be transparent with the media. And I understand that a journalist from the other newspaper was turned away from one of the opposition party's office yesterday. But in the interest of fairness and balance to all political parties, the Fiji Times have always sent out questions to all political parties. But the Fiji First Party has never answered our question since 2014.
And
Any comments to this?
absolutely. Look, it's their prerogative whether they comment on your questions or not. But if they were to exclusively shun you from a public event to say, Fiji Times is not allowed, look, in the interest of fairness, it's very, very important. When I made those statements about making sure that you subject yourself to full scrutiny, that applies to all media and that applies to all political parties, no exception. So my point is that, we should not, shroud our campaign in secrecy. This is a public event. This affects the way people make informed choices. This is not about a state of exception that applies to one political party or one media outlet. And for us, present here, we're not just targeting one particular, political entity. This principle around, and I want to reiterate that, and please quote me, and and do that. 116 does not say that, okay, these many rules apply, but with the exception of blah blah, barring these political parties.
No, it
the
applies to
law
everybody.
is the law. And the other principle, other than the principle of non-discrimination, is the equality and the consistent application of the law. And I think when it comes to that, the issues around consistent application of the law applies to everybody. And so when we do comment about access to the media, we mean all media. When we talk about political parties opening themselves and subjecting themselves to scrutiny, I mean all political parties. Yeah. So you see, transparency, accountability, good governance, all of that, this is not the preserve of a few. I am, of course, scathing when people chant the mantra of some of these things and their own actions are marred by inconsistencies. The point is that if you're going to go down the track, then know that you're subjecting yourself to scrutiny. I mean, people are going to, point fingers at you too. So why go there? Why would you, do campaign in a way which is shrouded in secrecy when you are dealing with a very, very public matter, elections? You are dealing with the fact that, what you do with campaign and all of that business is going to penultimately shape how citizens vote. So it needs to be done with full transparency. And that's why I said, until unless, of course, you are, your campaign has the effect of vilifying and encouraging discrimination on any of the prohibited grounds, you've got nothing to hide. Your campaign's clean, so be it. Let everybody see it and subject it to question and scrutiny and all of that. And that's what democracy is all about. So no exceptions, yeah? And neither does 116, anywhere say that, the state is an exception or any other entity for that matter is an exception. It's about consistent and equal application of the law. So my response, whether it will be the Fiji Times or, My Life or FPC or Fiji TV, is going to be the same, yeah? And, while we're at it, I think it's very, very important to recognize that the media must capture the plurality that exists on the ground in terms of, various political viewpoints, being able to, give equal amount of space to all political actors, right? I have to say that at this point, I'm very, very happy to see the media going out of their way and inviting all political actors, political parties, as they give out their questions, opinion columns, debates and so on and so forth. And we can only encourage that. And it is the prerogative of political parties. If they don't want to respond, they don't want to engage, you have to respect that. But if they consciously, occlude, certain media outlets, and if it is a public event and all of that, obviously it's an issue, and you have to raise those things, right? And that's the context in which I gave the response to Fiji Sun that I did.
And Mr. Raji also said that you guys will be auditing campaigns. So how will you be going about in doing
So basically, that's the level of vigilance we're looking at. The Human Rights Commission staff are going to be around the country, in polling stations, all of that. We are, looking at, various campaigns and what is being said in various contexts. I'm in the process of collecting, various evidence, and we call upon members of the public. If you, are privy to, discussions in various campaigns where people are vilifying around racial and religious lines, please bring it forward to the Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission, because there's a good reason why the Constitution under Section 26 has the prohibited grounds of discrimination, right? It's simply unconstitutional. So it wasn't done just to be fancy or anything like that. People have the right to be free from hate speeches. People have the right to be free from racial and religious vilification. We've got a strong history that tells us that we must move towards, equality and non-discrimination, and that's precisely where we're coming from. So we are going to be auditing that process, right? We're going to look at, various political campaigns and speeches and all of that. We also appeal, to members of the public, if they see stuff on social media that, has the effect of encouraging racial or religious vilification, has the potential to, in fact, incite or conflagrate communal violence, absolutely bring it to our attention. And, we want to make sure that those people who are actively vilifying and encouraging this, feel the full brunt of the law.
Actually, just how many staff will you have out and about to be able to audit these various campaigns?
Well, so we've got about 15, but they'll be working very closely with the Fijian Elections Office. We're not alone. We are stronger together with the various independent institutions working. This is going to be something that we're not going to simply start, around the blackout period. This is going to happen well before the blackout period. Our work started when the campaign started.
Yes.
I mean, so the mechanics are all in place. The Fijian Elections Office has been very diligent. They've got all of the mechanics in place. Now it's about audit. Now it's about ensuring compliance. And so for us, it's not just 72 hours. It's about, yesterday when the campaign began. We're going to subject everything to close scrutiny to make sure that our voters are able to truly enjoy credible, free and fair elections without any fear of reprisal or recrimination.
See, in Fiji, you don't necessarily have to have a unit sitting there and doing this because of the level of our coconut wireless.
Propinquity.
Yes, and that is very easy to get information. And with voters becoming more and more aware through our campaigns, through the media,
Yes.
People are easily able to refer things to us and say, look, this is what was said here. and even we receive videos and things that we are able to send across to FICAC. Some of the media organizations themselves are present at these events, and they send us videos and say, have a look at this, is this allowed? So the media itself is working very well to assist the FBO as well as the other agencies in enforcing the law. So it's not that election is to be conducted by the organization sitting on this side of the table, but everybody in this room is equally responsible.
Yeah. And you know, the point is that, and I remember when initially Fiji Sun had raised, and done this story about a certain community where a politician had gone in and was inciting sort of racial division and all of that. These are not people who are elections officers. These are not people who are competent investigators from FICAC. These are not human rights commissioners. These are individual citizens, and the point about this conversation is that it is about human dignity and human decency. So you will know when a conversation is wrong. When somebody is going down a certain racial or religious track, you know exactly what the intention is, and you know that this is actually making you uncomfortable, and this is a good reason why it's making you uncomfortable. And so I wanted to say to everybody, please do not think any less of our citizens. Just because they may not be, qualified lawyers and economists and, human rights advocates and so on and so forth, they don't know the difference between right and wrong. When something is racist, it's simply racist. And so our citizens have, have become very, very vigilant. They know the difference, and they are actually raising it. They're raising it in various platforms like the social media. What we're doing now is saying, hey, bring it to the attention of the institutions, and let's do something about it. We will make sure that the elections is absolutely clean.
Just a question to FICAC. Apart from the cases that have been referred to court, are you guys investigating some other cases of race and religious verification?
I won't be able to confirm the allegation itself, but we have received complaints that are currently under investigation. Those cases have been referred to us through the Office of the Supervisor of Elections.
Mr. Salim, after pleading with members of the public to send in recordings of this, how has the response been? Have you been receiving recordings from members of the public?
The members of the public have become more vigilant, as Mr. Raj has said, and this has led to more incidents being alerted to us. And in some cases, you need not see the recordings from anybody, but you can actually see sponsored posts going around with such activity. We will deal with that, and of course, when FICAC is eventually able to catch up with these individuals, it will act as a deterrent to others. And with Section 116 being read out aloud live on many channels as we are going through now, a lot more members of the public have had access to the law than they had previously. So it's working, and it will continue to strengthen the voters as we approach 14th of November.
We are legally obligated to uphold principles of non-discrimination, so we're not hedging bets for anybody. This is our constitutional obligation, and so we need to fulfill that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We'll take one last question. Right, thank you very much. Oh, Calvin?
This is Mr. Rajiv mentioned a good thing that people are becoming more vigilant, voters are becoming more vigilant, and they're invited to come and lodge complaints or make reports with the independent institutions. We all understand, we all in this room know that there is widespread racial and religious implication particularly on online and social media.
Except the Fiji Times doesn't think so. If you see today's front page.
Anyway, so my question is, why do you, people are becoming vigilant, but why has there so much complacency? Why aren't people coming?
Precisely because politicians have given credence to it. It is their political capital, and so what we're doing now, we're actually saying, look, the problem is nobody is afraid of talking about differences. The issue is when people try and exploit those differences for political gain, when people try and exploit those differences so that there's actual dissension into violence, and that you start to conflagrate, communal thinking and division and all of that. That's where the problem lies. The point is that every society has got ethnicity, race, religion, and other markers of difference. How do you differentiate between race and racism is the issue that Fiji is struggling with, because we are emerging out of the detritus of institutionalized racism. This is about 2 decades of institutionalized racism, where people think that certain communities must be historically preponderant over other communities. Not only that, but then it then translates into other forms of actual institutionalization of inequality and violence on the ground. So people are not complacent. People are not complacent at all. Let's not insult, the intelligence of ordinary citizens. The point is that politicians have actively, manufactured these fears, right? And they've exploited this for political gain. But the point is that for us, as people who are, responsible to uphold principles of non-discrimination, to uphold principles of equality, and so on and so forth, to make sure that the elections are free of violence, of racial and religious discrimination and vilification, so on and so forth, need to be vigilant, need to stand up, need to hold these institutions and individuals to account. And that's precisely what we're doing.
So it's the politicians at fault.
It is the politicians, but the point is that, it's not just the politicians. I mean, when it's a cyclical thing. When politicians start to give active credence to this, and when citizens begin to interpolate that stuff, and when journalists begin to see that as a fact of life, right? I mean, I know some politicians have said, look, race is a fact of life. How is it a fact of life? How did it become a fact of life? How was this facticity produced? When we started generalizing about certain communities and individuals. That, your Indo-Fijians are this, your Ethiopians are that, oh my God, too many Muslims here, and Muslims are this. These are the generalizations that then give credence to extremely racist point of view. Okay? When people start talking about, oh, Bangladeshis are coming into the country and we're going to have rape of children and la-da-di-da. Where are these ideas coming from? Okay? When people start talking about X community is coming to take over, too many Chinese, there's going to be lawlessness. Okay? These generalizations then give active credence to racist thinking. And before you know it, somebody feels very comfortable to go slap a Chinese on the street because they're less than human. Right? That's how it works. So when our politicians take to the platform and they start talking about, well, X community is like, preponderant and they're really taking over, and now they're converting, X community into Y group, you know that this is going to be mobilized in other spaces for other purposes. And that's where we're coming in from. So no, we are not oblivious. We do know that, every society has, ethnicity and racial and other markers of difference. It's what people do with those differences. And that's why we're having this conversation. Yeah?
Thank you. That being the last question, ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you very much for your attendance. Gentlemen, thank you very much for
Thank you.
making time.
Thank you.